Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Bizzy. I hope you enjoyed today's story. And if you do, please subscribe. Here we go. We just are rolling with this, you guys. Welcome to Conversations with Bizzy. It's episode 551 with William E. Rickman III, better known as Billy. What's up, Billy?
What's going on?
I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
We already did one take. I'm just going to let you guys know because Bizzy, I always forget something because I'm not so technical at the end of the day.
We clarified that 515 was my birthday.
Yes, May 15th was his birthday, so happy belated birthday.
So these are magical numbers.
They are. This is going to go out on Memorial Day.
That's awesome.
So we were talking about how you've been in Delray Beach, Florida since 1991.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just a youngin'.
I was still in college then.
I just gotten out of college.
Yeah.
So
tell us, I want to hear about this. So tell us, what is your background and what brought you here to Delray in 1991?
I grew up outside of, in the mouth of Boston Harbor. My dad, was a law professor at Boston University. My stepmother, was also an attorney, and she worked for a couple different firms, and most notably she was she worked for the state. She actually, Martha Coakley, who was the past attorney general for the state of Massachusetts, she was her best friend and kind of like would say the Robin to her Batman in a way, but always worked with her. So she worked as Middlesex district attorney, and at her untimely passing, she was she was in the government office, so she was like handling all the government stuff for the state of Massachusetts. My mom was the president of a country club. I have an older brother who owns an appraising company, and just grew up a middle class kid. Went to BU, got out of college, started working. If you ever saw the movie The Perfect Storm, I had got my very first apartment, and I got out of college and started working in a hotel. And I met a guy who I worked for, who was the food and beverage director. He was from Delray Beach, and I'd heard of Delray Beach. We had a neighbor who had come down here for years and years and years. My mom actually spent a winter down here one year, so I knew of Delray. I'd never been to Florida. Actually, the funny thing was, I had never left New England in my entire life, except for the third grade, to go to Washington, D.C., to visit friends, my dad's college friends who were attorneys in Congress, and they were also friends of the family and stuff, and then the whole 9 yards. And so I'd never been south. So, anyways, I lined up this apartment to rent, and the perfect storm comes, and I had just moved all my winter clothes in, and the seawall gave, and all my clothes are toast. So now all I have is, my mom had just sold the house to my brother. And so all I have is summer clothes at my mother's condo. Now, this guy that I had gotten to be friends with, he had called me up, and, we hung out. We were just buddies and stuff. And he'd moved back to Florida at this point. So he sees on the news what had happened. And so he calls me up, and I said, well, if you ever need me, because I was the resident manager at the hotel at that point, and I'd given up that gig, and I was on my first real vacation, not even knowing what to do. And so I said, always call my mom. She'll know where to find me, type of deal. So he calls up, and he's like, well, what are you doing? Now, this is October 30th of 1991. And I'm like, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. All I have is summer clothes. And he goes, well, he said his wife's name. He said, you know how she is. I'm planning on leaving her. I'm taking over running this nightclub down here. Why don't you come down, DJ for me? Because he had taught me how to, he half-assed DJ, and I ended up working for him at the restaurant in the hotel, and he taught me how to DJ, and I was pretty good at it. Like, I always liked music, and I'm, so come down, be my right-hand man. You're not going to get any fancy title. You're just going to be wherever I need you. You'll tend bar, you'll DJ, you'll work the door, you'll do all this stuff. I just read Jimmy Buffett's book of Tales from Margaritaville. I just got done reading this. And so I'm like, well, why not? I have no other clothes except summer clothes. So I'm thinking I will just move to Florida and, you know, I'll come back when the weather suits my clothes in the spring and that'll be that. And then, then you meet a girl and, decide to stay. And, it was fun and it was away from my family and everyone because my dad, people knew my dad because he was a very prominent attorney, and people knew my mom because she was the president of the country club. And my brother and I was a good athlete. My brother was a very good athlete. And it was one of those things of like my brother, I think I was at the game where my brother hit 3 home runs, but it had grown into the fact my brother hit 5 home runs. So, there was that type of thing where although as good of an athlete as I was, my brother's legacy was greater. You know what I mean? Like it was like, oh, well, we'll never top that. So here I was, and I was like on my own, and no one knew me. There was no one knew my name or anything like that. So I didn't have the family, and I was also kind of a fucktard. So I got in a little not in no trouble with the police, but enough trouble that my dad stroked a lot of checks to cover some of my acts of stupidity. So, anyways, it was just a new start, and then I was contemplating going back, and I called my dad up. I'm getting ready to go see him, and it's probably like just how this deal is right now. So his birthday is June 13th. His birthday this year is on a Friday, and Father's Day is on the Saturday.
Yeah.
So it was probably, I always tell the story, and I always try to think of like, when was I calling? I'm like, oh, it was probably like this lineup right here that I was doing the Father's Day, birthday, one universal, hey, by the way, can I get $500 call, rolled into
For his
one.
birthday, he's going to give you a present.
Oh, yeah. So I said to him, yeah, well, yeah, whatever. That was 22, 23, and so it's so funny. I said to him, I'm like, geez, I said, it's June. It's hot. I mean, it's like really hot. And again, just never have left New England. Like it's hotter than the hot I ever remember. So I said to my dad, I said, geez, I said, it's awful hot there. And he goes, well, how's it going? And he goes, do you like it? I said, oh yeah. I said, I have my friends and I'm tending bar and, I'm playing volleyballs every day when I'm not working. He goes, he didn't, we didn't have like we have now with the video cameras and stuff. I sent him a picture of me out on the beach. And he's like, well, he goes, I see you're darker than, and I was a lifeguard for the state of Massachusetts. So I always got super dark. I always wanted to go permanent George Hamilton tan anyways. So, but my dad goes like this. He goes, well, but I'm like, it's hot. And he goes, well, who decided to move to Florida? And I'm like, well, I did. He goes, because I didn't banish you there. He goes, I thought about banishing you to into like the old joke of like in the NFL, like you're banished to Green Bay. Like he goes, we thought about sending you to Green Bay, but you chose Florida. You chose to go there. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, and then he said, son, look, here's the things in life that you got to understand. He goes, everyone at some point is going to end up in Florida. Might as well do it when you're young and you can enjoy it instead of being old and being retired. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true, And then he said to me, he goes, well, let me ask you this. In all your experience of life, which again, I'm in my early 20s, which is not much, He's like, what would you rather have? 9 months of unbearable rain, sleet, and snow. And on the calendar, when it is supposedly summer, if you see 2 consecutive weeks of sunshine, that's one for the books. Or 8 months of ideal weather and 4 months of unbearable heat. He goes, where I'm sure that the ladies are very scantily clad due to the humidity. And I'm like, when you put it like that, that's actually not a bad thing. So toughed it out more. And then, what was supposed to be 1 year became 2 years, which then became, well, here we are 34 years later. I went back for 1 year and then I went back. Mildest winter in like the history of Massachusetts in 2001, 2002. People are walking around in January up in Boston, hoodies. Like this is it. This is global warming. I had a fur-lined London fog raincoat. I was frozen. I was like, this was horrible. I had been so ingrained into Florida at this point. Like, I was just like, maybe I just need to go back there. So when I got the chance, I came back, and that's been that.
Your dad was very wise, or is he still wise?
He's still very wise. He'll be 91 in
couple
weeks on June 13th.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Yeah.
He's William the
Junior.
Junior. Okay.
Technically, I think he should be 3 or 4. I have it skipped out. He's told me the story. I actually have a picture in my house, one of my favorite pictures in the world. I have a grandfather, my great grandfather was a boat captain, and it's a picture of him and his wife. And he wrote this letter that my dad had, and he just basically said, like, I think her name was Martha, but it was just like, my dearest Martha, you're the most insufferable woman I've ever imagined. I'd rather, sink the boat than come home to you. So there was a little generational skip. He was William too. So, he was like kind of the first, and I should be like the 5th out of that deal. But it's a great picture. I have it in my house. Julia will come and clean my house if you ever let her free to see that picture.
So were you always a partier? Because it obviously, I love your bucket hat. I love you have the dancing bears on his brow. You guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm like, oh my gosh. So, were you always a partier?
Sadly, yes. Always, yes. One of the fond, not so fond memories of life is in the 80s, like a lot of kids, I mean, we're about the same age, we all wanted to go to boarding school. I went to one boarding school, and as I always joke about it, like, the all white kid rich league football league, I was really, really good in that, not like you hadn't play any other talents, but and then once football season ended, their need for me ended at this one point, because I just kind of got in a little trouble. And I didn't party. I wasn't like a drinker back then. I just was mischief and myself have always had such a good relationship.
Yeah.
And Julia will tell you like that, or can attest to it. I'd like to have fun. So I've always enjoyed, I don't know about partying. I've always enjoyed having fun. Somehow partying, always the other chemicals and things got thrown in, but I got put out of one school. I wanted to go to board. I was like, this is so cool. I'm going to go to public school with all my friends. My folks had split up at this point, and it was the longest drive ever in the history of my life, where we're there. Like, my folks have been separated about, this is October. They got separated in January of 84. And, we're driving now to this school, and they're not speaking. My dad had this old 220 SE Mercedes. My dad's driving. My mom's there. I'm in the back. Dead silence. So my dad we're going, and he's giving me, just like these nuggets. Like, look, they're taking you because you play lacrosse. I have to put up a full year of tuition for you to get in, just to even have this to get in there. So like it was cash in advance on me. If that, that's the kind of trouble that I would get into, or shenanigans. So that's how the school's seeing me. So we get up, and we're about to make the turn. It's just beautiful bushes and stuff. And my dad just stops, and he looks at me and he says, I'm sorry. I don't know is it okay to use language?
Yeah, you can use language. So
my dad just stops, leans over the chair, looks at me like this. He goes, listen to me, fucko. This is your education. You are not John Belushi. This is not Animal House. And God damn it, this is not your own private country club. As God is my witness, we take the turn, and a golf ball whizzes by the car, almost takes the windshield out. This school was called the Winchendon School, a very, very fine educational place now. At this time, the Winchendon School was kind of more like a little booby hatch. And there were kids there, a couple that I knew who had gotten thrown out of other schools. And I always equate it now, again, I'm a proud alumnus of this school and what they've done in their education system. So don't sue me whinging them because I don't have enough to fight you. But at that time, the thing about it was great for me. Weekly grade reports were sent home. So there was no, I don't know how I failed geometry.
Right.
There was, you're not doing well. So it actually brought out actually being a good student in me because the grades were being mailed directly to my dad. Every week he would get the grades sent to the law school. Every week, if I didn't get a phone call, that I knew my grades were acceptable. If I got questions of why I was doing this or other things. So it was good. And it, like I said, the place sits on a golf course, or it did. I haven't been there. I haven't been back, but it just sat on a golf course. Picked up golf, and if my dad watches this, I still owe him the amends. And there was a little pro shop, and the first tee looked out onto Route 140, and there was a restaurant on the other side with a corrugated tin roof, and I got myself a driver. And that was the first driving range. We would see semi trucks coming down the road. We tried to hit the truck coming down the road. And then the big challenge was trying to drive over the netting of the house that was at the bottom of the hill that protected it from windows. But you just wait to hear that ping when it would hit the roof of the restaurant. It just bomb. I would get pink lady flying balls because I was a good sized kid. I played football, I wrestled, I played lacrosse. So I was
just like my son. My oldest was the same way. He played football, wrestled, and played lacrosse.
Yeah. So I mean, I was, I wasn't like jacked, but I mean, I was a scrawny kid early. I had a good growth spurt, and I just had just a toned, athletic body. So and I had good strength, and I swam, and I was a lifeguard in the summer. So driving balls was awesome. Like just could just crack balls off at like 200 yards. Now I can't play golf because I've through a couple of doing my own stunts and a few ARIs, which I like to refer as alcohol related injuries. I don't have the shoulder abilities that I once did. So
oh my gosh. Did you graduate from that school, that boarding school? You did?
I did.
And then you went to BC.
Went to BU.
And then you come down here and you're like working at the bar as a bartender. What was your major when you graduated from BU?
I went with I had a history degree, and then I went, and they had opened up a little side school. I think it was called the Hotel School of America at the time, and they had kind of enveloped it. And so I ended up getting a little side thing and going to this because I learned about hotels and wanted to work in hotels.
That's huge, because Cornell was really big in that.
Well, Cornell was but I mean, I was already at BU and stuff like that. So, so that was it. So there was, I got this like certificate for put me into hotel world. And that's how I started working in hotels and restaurants, because I really liked that business. I mean, my folks wanted me to go to law school.
I'm sure.
I didn't want to do that. I went this route instead.
Neither of you became lawyers.
No.
So when did you decide to quit drinking? Or what forced you to quit drinking?
Well, there was just a point that in the drinking world, I working in the restaurant business, everyone drank the way I did.
Yeah.
Everyone partied the way I did. All my friends were restaurant people. The people who lived in my apartment building, half of them were restaurant people. And if they weren't, they were construction people. And it was basically doing the same thing. There was just a series of events that just kind of happened. I lost a really good job. And I just had really bottomed out, and just it was a slow slide. It's not one of my favorite subjects, but I had a fiance. She committed suicide, and I wasn't there when she was calling for me. I was with someone else that night, and I was greatly devastated by that. And when I came back, and that happened while I was in Boston, and when I came back here, I had been married. My marriage after 5 years had failed. This had failed. And I was trying to get back to when I was 26 again.
Mm-hmm.
and when everything was good. So I was trying to wipe 6 years out. And, now I'm in my mid 30s. So I'm trying to be like I was in my mid 20s again. And, so I just had bottomed out. And it had just gotten to the point where, like, I, I always say that, when we do the how it works in AA, and we talk about the cunning, baffling, and powerful, and you don't know when when the booze took you, and that's the thing. I mean, I started drinking every morning. I would have a beer for breakfast when I was in college. A beer. I had the double B, the beer and the binger. That was it. It was the beer and the bong it. And somewhere along the way, and I always say, well, I became a corporate food. I worked for Marriott. I became
Mm-hmm.
a beverage
Mm-hmm.
director and a food and beverage director. And so then I started getting drug tested. So I had to give up pot. So I always say it was always the scales of
Yeah.
justice that worked for me. That if I drank too much booze, I just smoked some pot to balance out. And if I drank, smoked too much pot, a couple drinks would just balance it out. So I spent the 90s perpetual like this,
Yeah.
just, going back. And then when I started getting like real corporate jobs, and I had to, back then, marijuana use was so frowned upon, I'll go ahead and do a couple lines. That gets out of your system in a week. Pot lingers. You can't get rid of that. I'm drinking cranberry juice and white vinegar, and it's just like, oh my, let's give this up because I'm not going to pass these P tests. So, there was just that, but it just somewhere along the way, somewhere along the way, it just became too much. And the I had a couple neighbors. I had this one girl who I drank with who had gotten sober, and I started to weigh it out and was like, all right, maybe I'll go and do this. And so I was telling him, like, I'm thinking of quitting drinking, and I'm saying this as I've got my Miller in my hand. But I had really gotten to what they talk about. I had gotten to the point where I had a great job at Boston's on the Beach, and I screwed that up. And I had been in town for 12 years at this point, 13, almost 13 years. So everyone knew me. But also I was an affable nitwit, but like, I'd gotten to the point where I was just like unreliable, and I was
Yeah.
drinking too much. And I had a friend, and when I speak, I always ask people, because I was always makes me nervous to speak, no matter if I speak at where I've been going for the last 16 years, which is a part of my home group, or if I'm speaking in front of like a bunch of new people. I always say, let me ask you these questions. Like, have you ever, just raise your hand. Have you ever lost more than one job due to your drinking? Raise your hand. Have you, and sadly, these are all true. Have you ever did your family take bets on what holiday you would ruin and have like their own bingo card of like, he's going to do mom's birthday, Christmas,
Oh
Thanksgiving,
my gosh.
you know, raise your hand. You know, have you, did you ever lose more than one relationship, including a marriage, due to your drinking? Right. And so that was always the deal. But then more importantly, I said, did you have a friend that you used to go drinking with? At the primary reason, aside from there was probably a connection, but you really enjoyed drinking with them. And for me, it was because no matter how bad I got, I knew that he would be worse. And I said, his name was Buckethead. Did you have a Buckethead? And I always look at the people, and if they don't raise their hand, I said, guess what? If you didn't raise your hand, then you were a Buckethead. You weren't. If you didn't have a Buckethead, you were somebody else's Buckethead. So I mean, I was somebody else's Buckethead. But Buckethead was just this guy who, another Delray legend in his own mind, but his name was Max, and he talked like Jack Nicholson, like this. And he's like, "What happened?" One night he's sitting there, and I had I had come to this belief that I really my folks had been done with me. I just lost job after job at this point, and it had been a slow spiral from '03. Now we're into like '04. And I went home to see my dad in '04. It was his 70th birthday. So it's 2004. I had to think of doing the math. So on his 70th birthday, I went home, and there's my stepmother, and I'm like, and this is like, she was a wonderful woman, but she was harsh sometimes. She was just not harsh, mean word to say it about her. She was a realist. So I'm like, I need treatment. Now I've been hearing about this treatment. I'm shaking so bad. Like I'm trying to cook for them. I brought Buckethead home with me to like graze off, deflect, because he just is a motor mouth and just repeated everything he said. So I brought him. They'd met him because he had helped drive me up to Massachusetts, and he helped drive me back. And so anyways, I got Buckethead with me, but I'm like pouring rum like right into Coke cans, and my hands were shaking so bad. And I said, I'm like, well, I think if I go to treatment, I could do well. So my stepmother lights a cigarette, and she drank scotch, and she's taking a puff. So she goes, all right, so you think treatment would work for you, right? I'm like having this discussion with her because I'm trying to sell her. She's the hard sell. I mean, if I can get her on my side, then I'll get my dad. So she's like, all right, well, treatment. So she goes, we'll do this for you. She opens up her checkbook. She writes treatment. She goes, do you know how much treatment costs? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, I think they said like 25 grand, $25,000. So she writes this check, right? So I'm like, she goes, here. She goes, you see this check for $25,000? I'm like, yeah. She goes, well, this is what we would do. She takes her lighter, and she goes, we would just be burning this money if I gave you a check for fucking $25,000 to go to treatment. It was amazing. It wasn't amazing then. It's amazing now. Very funny, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
wise woman.
Well, anyway, so I get they sat down, they read me the riot act, and they're like, listen, get your shit together and grab yourself by the bootstraps, pull yourself, get your ass and get a job, dry out, get yourself going. We're not gonna help you out. You're on your own. You got to figure this out for yourself. Okay, So I get back, and they still give me a couple bucks, and I had some rent money and all this, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? And so, and again, I was plagued by this girl's death. It really bothered me, and I had felt, because she had called and left all these messages like, you don't love me, and I'm gonna kill myself, and I was with someone else that night when I got home. And these are the days of beepers and answering machines and no cell phones, And so, anyways, I just, it failed. And so the funny thing is I'm sitting there, and I always joke about this when I tell my story. I had no real income. I was pirating cable by reaching out my apartment window, and I figured out how to jimmy the box, and I was just screwing my cable in, which they had blocked with their little thing, but I could just there was 9 apartments. I could just find and open one. And there was one person I knew when everyone was at work. So I would unscrew their cable and plug in my own cable, and just have at it. And hey, you got to be entertained. So then the cable company had come. Now this is like not all this, but the cable company had come, and then they put a lock on that box so I couldn't open it up anymore. But I knew which one was my wire, and it's just kind of like the old days with rabbit ears. I could move my wire around, and I figured out I could actually touch somebody else's connector back then, and I'd get a couple channels. So anyways, I'm watching TNT one night, and it's leaving Las Vegas. And I'm like, wow, this is an incredible documentary. And it's the 3rd of July. And, or so it's the 1st or 2nd. Actually, no, it's the 1st of July. About. And I don't know. They're just watching that movie. This made me like, wow, this is my life right here. And then, of course, I get all sad about it. Her birthday was July 10th. And so I decide, well, you know what? I'm going to go out like this guy. I'm going to do Leaving Delray. And I'm going to drink like this guy. And if I'm alive, then I'll go to AA. And if I'm dead, and I've been having conversations with my neighbors about AA at this point. They had actually tried to take me down to DAF. They said if I didn't check in, they would leave me. And I started laughing. I'm like, listen, motherfuckers, I actually bought drugs down here. I bought weed down here. I know a couple of the homies that live in this hood. They'll give me a ride home. I'm not even worried about, like, don't threaten me with leaving me here,
Oh
because
my
I'm
gosh.
not. Julie's dying over there, but so that was it. I was just going to do Leaving Delray, and and it brings us back to this night. So I had all kind of grand plans. I bought all these fireworks, and I figured I was going to blow myself up like Wile E. Coyote,
My
set a
gosh.
ring up around myself. But I was at the deep end of the pool, because I figured if I went up, and I really didn't like being like, I didn't blow up and I caught on fire, I'd go like Michael Jackson and just dive into the bucket of water type of thing.
Yeah.
And so there was that. And then, like, I don't even remember. You could offer me all the money in the world, I couldn't tell you what I did on July 7th or 8th of that year. I couldn't. I
What year
don't.
was that?
This is '04. So, anyways, uh, and I had friends. They all are dead now. The friends who knew me, who said they just said, like, you don't want to know.
Is
Just,
Buckethead still alive?
but last I saw, I haven't seen Buckethead in about 9 years. I think since the last I saw him. He wasn't looking too good the last time I saw him. He was working over at Rich Wagon Bicycles.
Wow.
But anyways, so the 9th of July, I got up, and time's ticking. And so, anyways, I went down. I was at the end of my money. I went down to the store and I bought a couple more 12 packs of Pabst Blue Ribbon. And Buckethead's house was on the way home, and I stopped and started drinking with Buckethead. And Buckethead was just like, what happened to you, man? Like 10 years ago, every girl wanted to date you. You were the coolest guy in town, and now you're like, you know, a shit show. You're a mess. You're two steps away from, like, the homeless guy that you throw a quarter to behind the dumpster, and that's where you're going to be. And I was just like, damn, Buckethead's done with me. So that night, I'm laying, and we spent the rest of my money. He'd sweet talk me into buying another 12 pack of beer, and I'm laying in Buckethead's house. And I used to have panic attacks, like, all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm having a heart attack. And I get up and I go to the bathroom, and Buckethead's bathroom, and I have said this many times with no, it's the truth. The bathroom in Train Spotting was cleaner than Buckethead's bathroom.
Oh.
And I'm like, I'm going to die in Buckethead's house in this bathroom. And at 3:54, because I looked at the clock, and I'm like, wow, like 5:51. It's like 3:54. It's inverted. I cracked a Pabst Blue Ribbon, and that was the last drink I took. And it was July 10th, and raised it up, toasted her, and went home that morning, and was like, I'm done drinking, and said that to all the neighbors, and the neighbors were like, oh yeah, you done drinking till noon, done drinking till 6, done drinking until whatever you wake up, because you're just rolling in here at 8 o'clock in the morning. But there was a neighbor on the other side who actually came over and said, are you really, really done drinking? And I'm like, yes, I am. And so she's like, all right, well, what are you going to go to DAF? What are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I'll just get over it here. And she's like, this is not going to be good. I tried this. I did this myself. So I know what you're going to go through. I'm going to come and check on you. Leave your door open. And she was young and very pretty. I'm like, of course my door will be open. Just come on in. No, that was not the plan. But she came, she checked on me. Well, anyways, going back to no cable, I'm watching, I had from the restaurant all the times that I was working that I couldn't catch something on television. I taped movies left and right. So somehow I figured the good idea would be watch the VHS tape that had The Shawshank Redemption and A Christmas Carol on it. So watch a movie about people who had regrets in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a .32 revolver that I don't remember how I got it. And I'm like, well, this is it. My folks are done. I'm done. I'm like, I don't even know how many hours I was in being sober. I just know that I'd been sick. The party's happening out of both ends. I'm like, delirious. borderline hallucination. And I'm like, this is it. I'm just going to end it. So I found the gun, load the gun, and I'm crying. I'm like, I'm done.
Mm.
And right then, the knock on the door comes, and she tells me to, uh, she's coming in, and she's got Flintstone vitamins and Gatorade for me. And I'm crying. I'm like, she's like, what's the matter? I'm like, nobody loves me. I have no friends. There's no reason to go on. I have nothing to live for. And she goes, that's not true. She said, look, I don't know you, but I've seen you in the last year that I lived here. You walk by, you're very nice. You drink too much, but seem to be a very nice guy in general. That's why I'm helping you. She goes, I'll be your friend. I'm like, really? And she goes, I promise. So she goes, but you're going to go to A, but nobody knows. Nobody knows what it's been like to be me. Nobody knows what it's like to have, the parents that I did. And as great as it looked on paper, what really goes on behind the scenes, but that's just growing up. That's just life.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows what it's like, what I feel or she's like, you'll be surprised. She goes, you're going to go to AA. You're going to meet friends, and you're going to meet people who understand you and exactly what it's like. So I'm like, okay. And I'm like, will you be my friend? She goes, yes. And she didn't say yes, but she said, yes, I will be. True enough, she has been. We've had our ups and downs over the years, but she was always a good friend to me. So I took that gun. I walked down to the intercoastal. I threw the gun in the intercoastal. And 3 days later, or 2 days later, I think it was, I'm still shaky because of the detox thing. But as soon as I could walk more than 15 feet without shitting myself, I walked over to Crossroads, which was at that time about a block and a half from where we lived. And I went to my first meeting. And although it wasn't really my first meeting, because also that same girl who had passed away had said, you have a drinking problem. And I'm like, no, I don't. It's the best thing I do. It's what I do for work. I'm really good at it. So I had gone to 2 meetings under her suggestion. I'm like, all they did was talk about God at this meeting. They're Jesus freaks. This is a cult. Well, as time went on and I realized this and I looked at Where and When, it was a Jesus meeting. So I walked into a Jesus meeting. So that was the wrong choice to go to at that point. But I went to that one. And so I walked into this meeting. It was the downtown Delray group. And, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm like in the, they have the tables going all down the center of the room, all the chairs lining in the room. So I'm sitting middle table, middle chair. I'm like, everyone's just going to fill in around me. I'm just going to blend right in. Nope. I was monkey in the middle. Everyone's on the chairs around. I'm like by myself in the middle, 5 days sober, twitching, ghost white, sweat profusely running down my face, and I think they could tell, So we were like, how you doing today? I'm like, well, okay, I guess, like, how you doing? And so I went and I got a white chip. And then they're like, would you like a book? I'm like, well, how much are these books? And they're like, they're $8. And I'm like, well, no, I've just blown all my money on beer and fireworks. So $8 is a lot right now. And, the $4 for cigarettes is more important to me. So they're like, we will give you this book and you just pay us back when you get the money to do so. And I'm like, okay, well, on July 11th, and I should say this, my sobriety date is July 11th, because although I had my last drink on the 10th, the 11th of July was the first day that I had gone at that point, and doing the math in my head since I was probably 17 years old without a drink or a drug for an entire day. Because every other time I might have gone out with a drink, but I had definitely smoked a joint or done something. So that's my sobriety date. And I picked up that white chip. And it was it was probably about the 13th or 14th of July that I got that white chip. But July 11th was my sobriety date based on that. So
a month after your dad's birthday, almost
a month after I picked myself up by the bootstraps, So anyways, the long story is that I picked up that white chip. I got that big book of being superstitious. And then I love that thing from The Office. I'm not superstitious. I'm just a little stitious. But since that was a good thing and started a good journey, I still owe Downtown Delray $8 for that book. But I think over time, I was trying to like, I think there's 20 in a case. I think I probably bought about 6 or 7 cases over the last 20 years and handed them out to folks, along the way. But yeah, so that was that, and there's the backstory of the whole deal, and
so it's been 20, almost
it'll
21.
be 21 years in July.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So what do you think about when people say to you, "Is it a cult?" What is your response?
Oh, absolutely. I tell them, yes, it is. It's a huge cult. We sacrifice goats on Friday night, and you should come, and it will work out for you. I don't know. I mean, is it not? I mean, cults are cults. I mean, to the definition, when people ask me, like, is it a cult? Well, cults have true leaders. Like there's a true figurehead.
There's a true leader, right?
And there is no real figurehead.
What was the one's name in Texas?
Oh, David Koresh.
Yeah, David Koresh.
Yeah. So, but there's a bunch. So I actually had a friend of mine. So we were talking about this cult thing. Now, truth be told, what I do is I am the office manager for Intergroup. So what I do, for those of you who don't know, is an Intergroup office helps and supports all the local groups in its area. So we publish your meetings. We just got done doing the Where and Wins today, which publishes all the meetings online and in print. We buy books. We sell books. We give out information to groups that have questions. I try to answer it. So a friend of mine was just like, well, aren't you the cult leader at this point? Because you're the office manager. If I'm a cult leader, then I would recommend like spike the coffee. Let's see how many we can take out. But it is not a cult, AA is a very, very hard thing to define. Going back to the cunning, baffling, and powerful of when did you start to drink? To me, the cunning, baffling, and powerful is when did AA start to work? Because it's just like, I can't tell you when the drinking became too much. I can point to parts where I definitely drank a lot, but I can also point where I pulled myself back from those points and life went back to normal. But at somewhere it just took me. And AA does the same for you. It just at one point, if you invest in this, it will just become part of it. But the other thing is, a friend of mine, this is such true things that, as you pointed out, which is that I think a lot of people come in, I know myself included, that when I start to walk around, and then sometimes it's hard, like actually getting out like the normal world, like, oh, hi, my name is Billy and I'm an alcoholic. I'm like in a room of people that aren't, I'm just like, oh, I start to like say that, give a eulogy for this guy who meant a lot to me. And these people at Boston's on the Beach, I owed them an amends for behavior. And nearly 20 years later, I got to do it when this one guy who was the manager who believed me, I was a terror to him when he was the manager and I was the chef there. Absolute terror to him. But I gave this eulogy for him. And, but I get up in front of all these people. We're actually over at a bar. And I'm like, you all know me, but I'm an alcoholic. My name is Billy. And I started laughing. I'm like, well, you all knew me when I was an alcoholic. Now I'm like a different thing. But the point is that it's not everything who we are. Like, you're not just an alcoholic. You're a podcaster.
Yeah.
You're Julia's boss. There's Kama. You're a mother. You're all these other things. And just because you're an alcoholic is not the sum of everything that you are. It's just one little piece. I'm an alcoholic who describes my style as beach chic, that I wear, button down linen shirts with board shorts, and I wear a bucket hat or a baseball hat. And not because like I'm, follically challenged and I'm trying to hide that. It's because actually, like, even like these lights, that's the reason I wore the bucket hat today, was because of like, oh, there's going to be like studio lights in here. Fluorescent lights give me a headache. So that's why I have the hat down low and all this, and I try to duck, but I love the beach. I go out into the sun, I will not wear a hat, which is probably why like the top of my head is burning off and like, leopard spotted. So it's just, is it a cult? Anything can be a cult. And there are cult leaders, and that's the problem. There's people in this that I worked I took this job for one reason, which was it's a great thing to sit around and talk about like how good we should try to do some good. We should try to help people. And I had spent a lot of time saying, oh, if we could help people, if only had the ability to do something. I worked for the shameless plug for Suzanne Parado, who is the chef owner of Brule Bistro.
Yes.
I worked for her for 12 years. She is the greatest boss I've ever had. And I loved working there. I had the greatest job in the world. I waited tables at Brule. I didn't work nights. I didn't work the weekends. Had I was lead server. They gave me some, stupid title, and I made good money. And I learned a lot from her, not just about cooking, not about restaurant business, but life. And as she always said, you follow your passion, you follow your dedication. COVID happened. And I was very, very fortunate at that time because I had been working for her long enough that I was one of the few people, although I still had to, like many, fight, I got unemployment. So I took a real hard hit for the team and just rode the unemployment train because all the people that couldn't work, she kept everyone employed, and every week during COVID, she would like you felt like you were in a freedom fighter movie or something. Remember how they wouldn't let you gather?
Yes.
So all the employees would gather down at Rose's daughter and sneak in through the back, and she would have meals prepared for everybody, and we would have meals, and we would talk, and we figure out when we're going to open and who needed money, and she helped people out. And greatest woman ever.
Oh my gosh.
Love her.
Oh.
And she did so much for restaurant people, but more importantly, for her own staff. Now I was fortunate that I could ride the unemployment train as well as I did on that one. And so it was great for me. I just took, 6 months off and all this. But when I went back, a lot of people had gone out, and a lot of people had fallen off the train, and whatever you want to say. And it had deeply saddened me because there was either people who had relapsed or had just died. And I was with someone who she was very, very instrumental in this, that like, you could make a difference. And so this office manager job opened up, and I realized, this is a position that you're not just selling books, but you can actually do things, and you can get things done. And so it was a very, heavy decision. And I sat and talked with her, and she's just like, go, do this. You love AA, you talk to the people who are here at work, and you go and do that. And so she supported me in leaving. And not a day goes by that I don't miss. I loved working for her. I love my job now. I love that. But I love that what I'm able to do, and I believe that, and Julia was a part of my office and can, attest to someday off camera or just nod now. But what we try to do, and what an intergroup does, and what a successful intergroup does, is that we assist our community. We're working on a thing now called Unity in the Community, where for years there was this division between the North Palm Beach County, and there still is, and the district, and the way it's all set up. But now we're trying to all work together to make our county and help the people in recovery here as much as we can. And that's like a life's purpose. That's really fulfilling work. And I've got some great friends who, because you know my family, I'm like, I mean, we almost like we're on like it's like a set of like, all the little black sheeps. Every family has one. But it's funny thing is, like, all the little black sheeps have now like are all follow me, and so we're on like our own little herd of black sheeps. And I have one friend, I've got multiple friends, and I'm not going to drop their names because it's an anonymous thing. But I got about 9 really, really good friends, true friends that I never would have had in my life had it not been for AA. And that's the 9 people. The other probably 150 people that I know very well, that I've gotten to be friends with, that I hang around with, that I'll always talk to, or they'll talk to me, I've gotten to know through AA. So if this is a cult and you think it's a cult, well, here's the benefit of the cult. All you have to do is just be honest with yourself and be honest with other people. And no matter how whacked out you are, you will be accepted as long as you are your genuine, true self. And that's it. And if that's, welcome to the cult.
It's so interesting that you're talking about this, because that's where I met Julia. Was in the office. We were there. You were doing your golfing out. You were doing the golf outing, and I was like, "How do I pay for this?" So I had to come over.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Remember, and I was writing the check, and that's when I met Julia. And you guys, one day Julia is going to come on, even though she hates to public speak. But anyway, she only has to sit in here with Lily snoring in the background.
That's not the dog snoring. Let's just be honest right now. That's Julia.
That's Julia in the background snoring. That's Julia. But it's so fun because I wonder what it's like for you, because you get to give people that are just leaving treatment a chance to go back to work and go in a way that isn't too pressured, unless you talk to Julia. Just kidding. But totally pressured, and they get to go back and they get to start to make a semblance of their life again after being...
Well, I think Julia will tell you that the one thing is, if you come down and work for me, you'll be grateful for whatever job that you go to, that there's an HR office afterwards. So we have a mutual friend named Hope who said, like, you are the Michael Scott of sobriety. So I guess that's like, I don't know how that
back
is.
To the office again.
Back to the office again. And I'm not even a big office person. I just kind of like, there is a lot of that's what she sits down at the office. So, but I mean, no, it's that years ago, I was lucky in a way, with work. When I got sober, and I didn't know, all I had known was the restaurant business, and I'd gone to culinary school about in the mid '90s, and I went up to the Culinary Institute of America, and I took my test through the American Culinary Federation.
Wow.
To get the little initials of certified chef, which is like the low grade of you progress you're up, but it's still certified chef.
Where is that? It's in New York, right?
Hyde Park.
Yeah.
So you go up to Hyde Park and you do a test, you have a cooking exam and written exam, and so I, right out of culinary school, I went up and I took that test so I could have William E. Rickman III CC after my name, and that was it. But the point was, I got out and I knew I can't go and work in the restaurant business, because all I ever did was drink. And when I got off of work, I would go and drink. And so to speed the story up, I had gone to Publix. I had written them a bad check. I tried to get a job, the sober job, as working as a bag boy. They would not hire me because I wrote a bad check to them. And I was like dejected. And I'm like, well, I'm almost out of money. I am out of money. My parents were like, are you sober? Like, oh, here's $100 type shit. Like, just a little this. And I mean, I had money that, surprisingly, when you're sober, you start to find things. Like, I would roll up money and stuff it and hide it. And I was like hitting laundry lottery. That's where I came up with laundry lottery. I was finding money that I'd hid from myself or just forgot. Like, I found a suit coat with $500, and I'm like, that's the Lord working for me. This is that sober thing. So anyways, I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do? I walked into, there was an old Blockbuster over on 4th, right, where the nail place is. So I'm like, well, I got $12 in my pocket. If I buy, going back to VHS tapes, if I buy a $7.99 VHS tape and a pack of smokes, then I won't drink, because I won't spend that money on booze. So I walk in, and the lady's there. She goes, are you the new assistant manager? Now I'm wearing the typical, of our generation, outfit to go and look for a job. I'm wearing khaki pants and a navy blue polo shirt tucked in. The only thing that was not on that shirt was the Blockbuster thing.
Right.
Other than that, I looked right like the employee. And she goes, and I'm like, you need a manager? She goes, yes. I said, I can be your manager. She goes, there's a test thing over there. It was like one of those IQ tests, which I've taken so many of those psychological tests over years. I ace this thing. I think they're going to make me CEO when I got this, right? So I got hired, and I went and I became known in the original circles. I went from Billy Brule was my second title, but first I was Blockbuster Billy. So I worked at Blockbuster. That was my sober job. And I was basically a Randall Graves from Clerks. I mean, like people would come in. If you had a New York Yankee hat on, you got no shot at that movie. It was not, that wasn't happening. If you didn't pronounce the movie right, you didn't know the name, like Ladder. Do you have Ladder 52? No, it's Ladder 49. If you don't even know the name of the movie, you don't deserve to watch the movie. But what I did there was I manipulated the system, which was at Blockbuster, remember, you had to have a credit card on file.
Yeah.
But you could waive it with it was like a V card, which means basically it was just a debit card could get you a Blockbuster membership. So I was giving out Blockbuster memberships to people in sobriety, as long as they had a bank card that would run,
Yeah.
And then the other thing was too, we got like there used to be called a thing called Blockbuster Rewards, which was like you get like 2 for 1 on Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights and bullshit like that. So the whole deal was that we also got points for the store and like little bonuses. So, you don't have a credit card, but you have that. Well, if you sign up and get the rewards membership, which you will get to watch more free movies, this is the thing. So I sold rewards to people in sobriety with bank cards and like led the country in this stuff. And then when the store managers were like faltered off, and I was the assistant manager, maybe this assistant store manager. So I hired everybody in recovery who needed a job. I started them off working at Blockbuster with me. And I would give people jobs as long as they passed the security test, like, they would then. So I had this whole thing. And so that was the first thing. I would just hire people, and then I'd get them, or I'd place them in the other stores around. And, sometimes you go to a meeting with fun of us. It was like 6 or 7 of us with Blockbuster shirts on.
That's where it began.
That's where it began. And so it was fun. And then what happened was a lady drove into that store, like missed it. It was like one of those, like I went back and watched the security tape. Like if I had not gone to answer my friend's question, I would have been killed because I was standing right where this woman came through the store.
Oh my gosh.
They board the store up, and 2 nights later, which I'm like, that's the windows are smashed. They have plywood all over this. The folks, this guy and the girl that I had working in the store for me got robbed and held up at gunpoint. And I lost my mind because, they called me, and she knew that she was the assistant manager, and they got the safe. So Blockbuster sends the loss prevention guy down. And the loss prevention guy, he's interviewing, and he's like, well, this guy's from New York. And I checked out where he lives, and it looks like it's a residential place. And I don't know how you couldn't pull what it was at a sober house. But basically the kid said, I came down here for treatment. He goes, he's an admitted drug addict. And I think this is an inside job. And I was stunned. And I looked at the guy who was the district manager at the time, and I'm like, Mr. Loss Prevention guy, let me ask you something. What's our, you send your inventory teams in here. Where are we? And we were at 98% retention, meaning that we had basically no loss. Our 2% was due to like equipment
Nebulous
failure.
Stuff, right, yeah.
Nothing. Right. So I said, so you're saying that they robbed us? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, this kid, and he was my first real my first attempt at sponsoring. I'm 3 years sober at this point. So I said to him, you can go fuck yourself. And in fact, this is a discrimination. Let me tell you something. We had the one token sober kid. I had 12 employees, myself included. 11 of them were in sobriety. And then I had the one kid who was in college who worked there. And I said, just so you know that you're saying it's drug addicts who do this store that's completely manned and run by drug addicts has the highest retention rate in here and no theft at all. So,
Go pound sand, dude.
go pound sand. So anyways, yeah, I quit there, but it's always been an amazing thing. And going back to uh, the chef, chef hired me, and then through me, she said, I had a great work ethic, and there was other people that came in, and I don't know what it is now, but it was about a 50% ratio at Brule of people in the program, because chef always saw that people who were trying to get their lives together um, and would work the hardest. They were the ones who were always on time. And that's what I have found too, is it's like, and having to manage people who don't get paid, who are just volunteers, who are on there on the whim, I mean, Julia and I had her moments, but I still love Julia. But, the point is, it's just like, but that's even a greater, and I learned that managerial skill again from Chef Parato of how to really handle and deal with people, because she was always really, really good at it. And so she was wonderful at it. And I learned a lot of lessons from her about how to do that and really work with volunteer people. And more importantly, even like the stuff that we do now, we have these picnics. And I think you might have come to one.
Yeah.
And we have the golf tournaments. And the greatest thing that you can do for people, it's like, work is something. But when you do volunteer work and you do this service work, and that's probably my great skill. I love to get people involved and doing service work and getting them involved. And, like when Julie was doing the golf thing, Julia, you're handling all this for me, and it's just like, it's that what we need early on in recovery is that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And that ability to take ownership of something, take pride in the work that you're doing, and take pride in yourself. And that's how you really build self-esteem back up, because we lose self-esteem after we've been drinking for so long or done the things that we do, or like, oh my God, when I got sober, I thought I was always shocked that like they weren't coming to knock on my door and drag me off to The Hague for the war crimes that I had committed in my head, which I had done nothing. But that's how we live.
Yeah.
So, getting people involved and making them feel the ownership and part of, and that's what we do down at the office. Every volunteer feels like, and I always say it's not me. All I do is I just come in and tell you guys some jokes and fall asleep in my office in the afternoon, and you guys do all the work. And that's what it's all about. And that's part of the cult too.
It is.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that Julia's doing so many. You guys, you're going to be like, who is Julia? We want to see Julia. You'll get to see Julia, I promise. But she's like Charlie from Charlie's Angels. She's just in a box. Just kidding. But she learned from you, because she does so many volunteer jobs. Does anybody ever told you that you sound like Michael Rowe, the guy who does dirty jobs?
No.
You do. You sound just like, isn't that his name? Michael Rowe. I think that's his name. Yeah. From Dirty Jobs. You sound just like him. All right. My last question. Now that you are almost at 21 years of continuous sobriety, what does AA mean to you after decades of living like this?
Oh, well, I don't know. That's a tough question. What does AA mean to me? AA has opened my eyes to what was always there, and has cleared my mind to, one of the things that we say is that we try to practice these principles in all our affairs. So what AA has done for me, or what AA means to me, AA means to me simply this: hope. It gives people hope. It showed me that, on our medallions, we have "to thine own self be true." But really what it did was it awakened to the fact to me, it was the other Shakespeare quote, that the fault did not lie in my stars, it lied within myself. And if I work on myself, then I can become a better version of who I am. And I can honestly say, I know that I'm a better version of the person that I am today than I was when I first got sober. I can also say that I am a better version of the person that I am today than I was even like literally 5 years ago, because my circle of friends I have, and Julia knows who they are. I have two friends who are female who have been such positive influences on me and shown me so many different things and taught me so much about myself. Even people like Julia, I mean, it's like the people that I have surrounded myself with have made me better, and maybe I've helped make them better. And that's the other thing. It's this give and take. And finally, I guess it's just, realizing the simple thing. It's like, you know, if I put everything else aside, I can realize one thing. It's like the world is not. I mean, it's the truth. It's a truth statement. I am a reverse paranoiac. I actually believe that the world is conspiring in my favor as long as I keep doing the next right thing and trying to help other people. And that's what AA has meant to me and has taught me.
Thank you so much, Billy. That was beautiful.
Oh, no. Julia was holding up a sign. I was reading her card. Everything I've said, Julia's been holding up cue cards, and that's why I'm looking this way.
I wish I could turn the camera myself, but I can't. I'm not going to get up and turn the camera so you guys could see Julia, but I promise you'll see it one day. Billy, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure has been all mine. Thank you very much.
And if you have anything going on in the future that's going on in Delray and Palm Beach County and AA, come back on and tell us about it, will you?
I'll tell you right now, we're going to do a thing on, if you see this and you would like to be a part, we have our H&I committee. They just had their elections, and hospitals and institutions, no matter how early on in sobriety you are and you want to get involved, it's a great thing to do. I used to go down in DAF. The first time I went in, I thought I wasn't going to get out because they had a mental health ward, but they'll let you out if you came in free of charge. And I talked about this what we're doing with North Palm, and what we're trying to do better is we're having an event called Unity in the Community. It'll be June 7th from 2 to 4 at Delray Central House, and we will be talking about Bridge the Gap and H&I and public information and all kind of other things, and trying to figure out how we can make all that the experience for the person coming out of treatment, coming into a halfway house, helping them transition into this life. So that's our big goal for this summer, is to really work on that.
I love that. So if you're in the Palm Beach area, that's June 7th at Central House. Do we know the address? Central House. Do we know the address of Central House?
2170 West Atlantic Avenue. You just come on around the back.
Yeah, come on. It's in a shopping center. I can tell you that. It's in a shopping center. And what time is it?
From 2 to 4.
2 to 4, you guys. Now, if you want information, you can reach out to me. I'm also going to have the intergroup office's phone number on here and their email, so you don't have to bug.
No. You can actually, if you want, you can call down. I love prank phone calls. I like making them. So if you want to prank the office and, say like, I mean, one of the initiations to the volunteers is when a new volunteer starts, I actually call down. I did this to Julia. What did I do to you? Did I tell you I was in a pool? Like, I'll call up and I'm like, they're like, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm like, hey, can you help me? I'm like, I don't know where I am. Can you look up Google Earth? Because if you can, I'm there and I'm in a kiddie pool and I'm floating in a sea of Jack Daniels. I'm afraid I'm going to drown. I got a mainline and I got one of them turkey baster needles in my arm, and I don't know if it's a drug problem or an alcohol problem I got. And I think the real problem I have is I suck the jelly outside the donuts and I put them back in the box. And the poor girl that answered the phone was just like, I don't know if I can help you.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, you have. It was Christine.
So maybe you won't want to call intergroup.
You do, okay. Yeah, no. But if you do, if you call down for a prank phone call, we do like that. So the phone number for intergroup office is 561-276-4581. So it's like, look, yeah, that is the real number.
And what's the email? If they wanted to email you or go to your website.
The email is info, INFO, at AA, that's AA, NIN, palmbeach.org. So any questions like that, and you can go to our H&I website, sign up. If you want to get involved in H&I, you don't even have to come to that, just sign up. It's aahelp.net. And those are the two websites that can do it. So thank you for having me. And
Thank you. And it's been awesome. You guys, thanks for listening. Please share this with your friends. And just know this, you're never alone. Take care, everybody. I'll be back soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Conversations with Bizzy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, if you could subscribe, that would mean the world to me. And follow me on all social media. And you can also get my newsletter every Friday morning into your inbox. Just go to elizabethchance.com and subscribe. Take care.